Hey everyone, it's Ivan with kitbadger.com, out here for another course review, and today talking about the 3-day level 2 night vision class with AMTAC shooting. Well, it was 3 days and there was a bunch of night vision, actually kind of encompassed a lot more, but starting in the beginning, day 1, initially started right around afternoon, in part because North Idaho, especially coming in the winter, pretty long nights, sunsets at like 4:30, something like that. So initially started at noon, went over basically a safety brief as well as a med brief and kind of a overarching like, hey, here's what you can expect over the course of the next 3 days. From there, and I guess backing up a step, this was up at the AMTAC Training Center up in North Idaho, and from there, after that brief, basically headed down the hill to the range. Initially started out getting some good zeros with our carbines. Once everyone confirmed, at a solid 0, moved forward and started working through a number of different drills. Initially going over circle of awareness and then just kind of continuing to do a number of drills, largely up close and largely working through our different sighting systems. This, of course, being a night vision class, you had whatever type of day optic, and maybe you have a second one. For my own part, I was basically running a Leupold 2-10, and on top of that, kind of offset a little bit, I had the Delta Point Pro. So basically getting reps on both those, and then of course, shooting lasers for what we would be shooting later that night. Basically ended up using the green vis laser on that laser I was running as well. Just moving through a number of different drills, working through all the different sighting systems. And once we finished with carbine, went ahead and pretty much largely through the same number of drills, working on both grip, stance, trigger control, all of those things, and shooting our pistols. Working some slow aim fire, and eventually moving on to some other drills. Because of how late in the day we started and how much light there was left, that pretty much brought us to sunset, so ended up heading back up the hill, ended up having actually an awesome meal up there at the AMTAC Training Center, and then after that, it was time to go over a couple things. One, kind of a hip pocket class on best practices as far as setting up your nods, to include actually adjusting them, like making sure you're seeing as clear as your tubes will allow you, whatever you're seeing. So basically how to adjust them for your eyes. And then from there, time to go do more shooting. We went back initially, checking zeros back there at that 50-yard line. Again, everyone had largely done all of this during the day, but one, checking to see if you could actually shoot passive through whatever your aiming device was at that distance, and seeing how it printed on paper, and then also, of course, ensuring that your laser was true. Pretty much everyone there, I want to say, had some sort of slaved vis laser to their IR laser, so pretty easy with respect to that, because you do it during the day and then you're good at night. But once we confirmed all that, moved back up and largely went through a lot of the same drills we shot during the day. And just lots of good reps, shooting both rifle as well as pistol, and working through those different aiming systems with respect to our rifles, and then of course going over and shooting pistols, passive as well as active, if people had IR illumination set on their guns as well. And that right there basically wrapped up day 1, cutting out of there probably around 9 at night, I want to say, and right back at it next day, again starting at about noon. This time, because we were going to get reps at night, again, see that progression there, work on something during the day, and then prove the skill out at night under nods. So got to do the run and gun, which honestly, probably one of the coolest things with respect to the AMTAC Training Center is that course of fire. You're essentially moving long, shooting steel through trees, all different distances, and yeah, fun and challenging. So first thing we did on day 2 was actually go down and get a run and gun, both with our rifle as well as our pistol. Tons of fun. And after that, ended up heading back up to the AMTAC Training Center, and it was time for some classroom stuff. As I mentioned, 3-day level 2 night vision class. So yes, it was 3 days. Yes, it was night vision. So many other things. One of the things we actually worked on was basically some small unit tactics stuff, as far as like, hey, within a small group, small unit, how do you move? Like, how do you address these different things? To include some just stuff like hand and arm signals, like simple patrolling type stuff. And went through best practices and all of that stuff. And then, yeah, like, let's go wrap it out. So ended up actually going down and getting some reps, basically breaking the entire group into a couple smaller groups. And then within there, rotating through whether it was point man, team leader, like tail person, all of which important positions. And yeah, getting reps going through all that stuff. And of course, being a night vision class, largely rep all that stuff out at night as well, which I think probably broke for dinner first, but then went back out there and got reps. And something that was really cool is the ability to swap bolts. So everyone's bolts came out, bolts went in using the Blackbeard Mantis, I guess it is, or Mantis Blackbeard. Pretty cool. Basically, it makes your gun inert, so it cannot fire projectiles, but emits lasers. So you can essentially have laser wars. But yeah, being able to actually get training, essentially force on force, with your gun, your entire setup, whether it's optics, lights, lasers, all that stuff, and just emit lasers, pretty cool. So definitely did a little bit of that night as well. And then finally, wrapping up night 2, time for that run and gun. Really fun, definitely more challenging at night under nods, but again, getting to rep through it, both shooting our long guns and shooting our pistols. Oh yeah, and while that wraps up day 2, I can't remember if it was sometime during day 2 or if it was day 3, but there was a comms class. So again, lots of things going on in this 3-day night vision class. Part of the gear requirement was basically integrated comms, because if you were going to be working in a small unit, especially this day and age, 2024, you should probably have integrated communications. So with that, part of the gear requirements were over-ear hearing protection that was amplified with some sort of down lead, so you could have a push-to-talk and then a radio. Pretty much everyone was running largely some sort of Baofeng, and yeah, basically best practices, all that stuff with respect to communication, and that happened again somewhere in day 2 or 3, do not recall. But I want to say starting off day 3, again, back to kind of classroom stuff. Initially started with, hey, what are we trying to accomplish CQB? What are best practices? And just breaking it down into simple things as far as we need to get through this. And not so much like, hey, you're going to go start kicking doors and clearing houses. More framed as far as, hey, you in your house and help us on the way, but you need to clear your house because your loved ones are not co-located with you in your house. Like, how do we go about doing that? Not, hey, we're going to stack like 20 guys and go like rush this place. Not that. But ended up going through all of kind of largely just best practices and how to clear all kinds of different both problems you would run into and then how you would ultimately solve them. Whether it was center fed, corner fed, as far as doors, or coming to T intersections or open areas and all of the different concepts. So then we got to, of course, rep through that stuff. And of course, since we had our guns turned into laser guns, basically you get to get reps, again, with your gun, with your setup, all of those things, but shooting lasers. Because there was a number of targets set up in a number of different rooms in that shoot house up at the AMTAC Training Center. So yeah, bunch of reps just going through there, working with your partner and yeah, getting some runs in. And eventually ended up breaking for dinner, and following dinner, a mindset talk, which if you've ever been to Indian Bill's classes, it is absolutely a mainstay. It's awesome, probably worth the price of admission. And this class again, definitely had a mindset talk. And then after that, we did I guess it would be our last bit of live fire. Ended up heading back down for one more run and gun, which glad we did, because man, such a fun course of fire, especially under knots. There was definitely opportunity to, again, work those concepts and principles we worked on during daylight hours, or for that matter, just with lights on in the shoot house. Also, of course, got reps under nods before eventually the FTX, final training exercise, where we were broken into 2 squads. One squad would work as role players for the other squad and then end up swapping. And it was really fun. It's pretty cool. Basically putting all that stuff together as far as all those different components we had worked on the last 3 days and getting to run through it. And again, being able to use your gun, your setup, optics, whatever it may be, and shoot lasers. Thoughts overall? Well, one, if you're in a place on your journey with respect to shooting and night vision where you just want to get a lot of reps shooting, probably not the course for you. Something else would probably be a better fit. This was absolutely a level 2 class in that everything was building off of the idea that you already had the ability to safely move, manipulate guns, all of those things under night vision. And being a level 2, there was a lot of stuff in there. It was really cool though, getting to work through all of those different things, whether it was the integrative communications piece or honestly, small unit tactics to include CQB primer and topping it all off with the ability to actually pretty much go force on force without shooting projectiles. So no one really wants to get their nods or anything on their gun as far as lenses or anything that busted by UTM, SIMs, anything like that. So yeah, being able to rep through it with lasers, really handy. And overall, rad class. So if you are there and you're not at a place where you just want to get reps shooting under nods, might be a good fit. But there'll be links down below if you want to check it out. And as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.